Carol Lawson has never been one to chase flash. Her system, built on deliberate pace and airtight defense, has drawn success at Duke, and now it's shaping the very identity of Team USA. But that identity may be at odds with one of the most dynamic offensive players in recent memory. Caitlin Clark, whose scoring brilliance at Iowa and impact as a WNBA rookie have made her a household name, finds herself on the outside looking in. It's not a question of talent. It's a question of fit. And when a system doesn't make space for its most electric scorer, the message is clear. This team isn't built to showcase stars. It's built to grind out wins.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
The absence of Clark speaks volumes about the direction Team USA is headed. With a roster built around players like Aya Wilson, Breanna Stewart, and Sabrina Ionescu, all versatile, defensively committed athletes, Lawson appears to be doubling down on discipline and control. While Clark could light up the scoreboard, her fast-paced, improvisational style clashes with the slow, physical rhythm of international play. In Lawson's system, every rotation is calculated, every possession managed, and there may simply be no room for the chaos of brilliance that Caitlin Clark not on Team USA. Let that sink in. One of the most high-profile, high-impact rookies in recent WNBA history, a player whose offensive stats exploded off the page, who led the league in assists, and who has already been called a transformative figure for sport, is not wearing red, white, and blue this summer. And it's not about her talent. It's about the system, the fit, the philosophy, because when it comes to Team USA, individual brilliance doesn't guarantee a jersey, especially not under a coaching strategy that values defense, pace control, and system compatibility over star power. Coach Carol Lawson has made her preferences clear. Her approach to basketball, both at Duke and now echoed in her influence over Team USA's roster construction, leans slow, methodical, and defense first. And Caitlin Clark? She's fast. She's high volume. She's an offensive engine. Her game is built around movement, transition, sharp cuts, and deep threes. It's the exact opposite of the system currently being prioritized for international play. This isn't just about Caitlin Clark being left off a list. It's about a broader message that no matter how talented you are, if you don't fit the mold, you're out. And that mold right now is built on defensive reliability and system execution, not offensive fireworks. Let's talk about what really happened here. Clark's omission wasn't random. It's consistent with USA basketball's past decisions. During the last Olympics, the team passed on emerging talents in favor of experience and defensive versatility. Players like De'Arica Hamby, reliable, physical, and system-friendly, were chosen instead of flashier, younger scorers. That choice sent a clear message. Roster spots aren't about highlight reels. They're about chemistry, discipline, and fitting into a collective strategy. So it's no surprise that Caitlin Clark's fast tempo, shoot-heavy style didn't land her on the list this time. Not when Coach Lawson is building a team designed to control tempo and wear down opponents with defense. But let's be real, this was never going to be a quiet decision. Clark's popularity is massive. She's not just a star, she's a movement. Her games draw record ratings. She moves merchandise. She's brought unprecedented attention to women's basketball. Leaving her off the Team USA roster was always going to stir backlash. Fans are frustrated. Media is questioning the logic. And yet Lawson and USA basketball have stayed firm in their rationale. System first. Always. It's not personal, it's philosophical. And that's what makes this so controversial. Because while Clark might be unmatched offensively, the international game is a different beast. It's slower, more physical. Defense is prioritized. The style rewards physicality, patience, and team execution over improvisation and volume scoring. It's not the WNBA. It's not the NCAA. It's its own battlefield. In that context, Coach Lawson's choices start to make more sense. Her teams at Duke were never built to run and gun. They were structured, deliberate, and defensively focused. That approach is now being carried into national team strategy. The core roster reflects that. Players like Aya Wilson, Breanna Stewart, and Sabrina Ionescu, stars, yes, but one's known for two-way play and system flexibility. Clark doesn't fit that mold. Her game revolves around offensive control, not defensive containment. That contrast might work in the WNBA, where space and speed are assets. But on the international stage, those same tendencies can be a liability if the team's identity isn't built around them. Still, leaving her off the roster means taking a risk. Because when the game tightens in the fourth quarter, when you need someone who can hit from anywhere on the floor and create shots out of nothing, Clark is the kind of player you want. Her offensive ceiling is one of the highest in the game, and there's a very real chance that her absence could be felt when Team USA faces top-tier international defenses. That's where the tension lies. Do you build for consistency and defensive chemistry? Or do you make space for the X-Factor scorer who might not fit the system, but could save you in crunch time? USA basketball clearly went with the first option. There's also the matter of training camp. March will be the proving ground, but by the time the final roster is locked in, the decisions made now will already have set the tone. Scrimmages will show us what kind of team Lawson really wants. Whether she holds firm to the defensive, slow-tempo plan, or shifts to a more flexible, offensive-minded game. But based on Kurt's elections, there's no sign of that shift happening. Instead, it's a commitment to a strategy that's been reliable in the past. The logic is simple. Build around what wins. In international tournaments, that usually means control the pace, own the paint, and keep turnovers low. Defense first. Play calling over improvisation. Experience over excitement. That doesn't mean Clark isn't elite. It just means she's elite in a different context. And this isn't the first time Team USA has favored fit over fame. The history of USA basketball is filled with top-tier talent left on the bench, or left home entirely, because they didn't align with the coaching vision. It's a pattern, a tradition, even, and Clark is just the latest in a long line of players caught in the middle of a philosophy-first approach to international dominance. But that doesn't make a decision easy, and it definitely doesn't make it popular. The fallout is already clear. Fans are divided. Some argue that not including Clark is short-sighted and underestimates her impact. Others defend the coaching strategy, pointing out the importance of cohesion and discipline at the global level. But either way, the narrative is loud, and the pressure on Team USA just went up, because if they win, the strategy gets validated. But if they struggle to generate offense in tight games, Clark's absence will be the headline. Every missed shot, every stalled possession, every close call will be viewed through the lens of what if. That's the gamble, and it extends beyond just one tournament. This decision could shape how future teams are built. It could influence how other coaches view offensive stars who don't perfectly fit into pre-built systems. It might even impact how players like Clark are utilized in other elite settings. Because once a narrative like doesn't fit the system gets attached to a player, it can follow them for years. All of this underscores the complexity of roster construction at the international level. It's never just about picking the best players. It's about assembling the most functional team, a unit that can execute the coach's vision, play under pressure, and maintain consistency in a high-stakes environment. Caitlin Clark may be one of the most talented players in the league, but in a system designed for control, her strengths weren't prioritized. And that's what this comes down to, not ability, not popularity, but philosophy. Now, the only question is whether the philosophy holds up under pressure, because if Team USA dominates, the critics fall silent. But if they falter, if offense stalls, if games get close, if they need a scoring burst they don't have, then every highlight reel Clark's ever made will come back as a haunting reminder of what might have been. So, where do you stand on all this? Should system fit outweigh raw talent at this level? Is USA basketball playing it smart or playing it too safe? Should Clark have been given a chance to prove she can adapt? Or is Lawson right to stick with what she knows works? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you think talent should still matter. Share it with someone who's been following Clark since day one. And hit subscribe to stay updated, because the next decision could reshape the future of women's basketball. What's unfolded with Caitlin Clark isn't just a roster snub. It's a defining moment in how we talk about legacy, merit, and system-driven basketball politics. When a player like Clark, who's taken the WNBA by storm and redefined offensive expectations in her rookie year, doesn't make the cut for Team USA, It sends shockwaves, not because she's entitled to a spot, but because she's earned a seat at the table. And the fact that she's been left off, that says more about the system than it does about her. This is an unfamiliar territory for USA basketball. This is an organization known for sticking with what it knows. Players with experience, predictable roles, and quiet adaptability. And right now, under Coach Carol Lawson, the message is loud. It's not about excitement. It's about execution. It's not about headlines. It's about habits. But the reality is, the women's game has changed. And Caitlin Clark is that change. Let's talk facts. Clark is a WNBA's leader in assists. She's stretching defenses every time she crosses half court. She's forcing teams to guard differently. She's bringing in record audiences. That's not hype. That's quantifiable impact. And yet, none of it was enough. Not for this system. And that's where the friction is. Because while Lawson's vision for Team USA is rooted in physicality, defensive structure, and possession control, Clark represents the very thing that's breaking the mold. She doesn't just score, she dictates tempo. She warps defenses. She forces mismatches. And when you bench that kind of offensive weapon, you're betting that your system will never need a bailout, never need a burst, never need a bucket that only a player like Clark can create. That's a high-risk gamble on a very conservative plan. Of course, the counterargument is familiar. International play isn't the same as the WNBA. It's more physical, more condensed, more strategic. Space is limited. Tempo is slower. Defense is emphasized. The stakes are tighter. In those conditions, a system built on cohesion and toughness makes sense. But here's the catch. That kind of logic only works until it doesn't. It only holds up until the offense stalls in the third quarter against Spain. Or until a game against France comes down to the final possession. Or until the team gets outshot by Australia, and there's no one on the court who can create instant offense. That's when you want a player like Clark. Not for 40 minutes. Not to lead the system, but to change the outcome when the system breaks. And let's be clear, system failure happens. Even the best-built plans hit walls. Opponents adjust. Defenses smother. Games slow down. That's when talent trumps tactics. That's when a three-point dagger matters more than a defensive switch. So if this isn't about skill, then what's really going on? It comes down to coaching philosophy. Carol Lawson isn't guessing. Her slow tempo, defense-first approach worked at Duke. It won games. It built a disciplined culture. And now she's applying that same blueprint to Team USA. And yes, that means making tough cuts. That means valuing defense over dynamism. That means passing on offensive prodigies who don't slot neatly into her system. And Caitlin Clark? She doesn't slot neatly anywhere. Because you don't plug her into a system. You build around her. That's the key difference. And maybe that's why she didn't make the cut. Because right now, Team USA isn't being built around offensive catalysts. It's being constructed for structure, consistency, repetition. Clark doesn't fit that mold. And instead of adapting the system to fit her, they chose to leave her out of it entirely. Which raises another question. What does that say to the next generation? What message does it send to young players who see Clark dominating headlines, breaking records, and shifting culture, only to be told it's still not enough? That unless you fit a narrow definition of two-way play and system obedience, you don't get to represent your country? It's a decision that creates ripples. And those ripples don't just impact Clark. They impact how women's basketball grows. Because Clark's style of play isn't just good for the court. It's good for business. She brings eyeballs. She sells out arenas. She's made highlight reels a daily occurrence. Leaving her off Team USA doesn't just remove a scoring option. It cuts off a storyline, a moment, a connection with fans, especially new fans. This isn't just a basketball story. It's a cultural one. Caitlin Clark has become a face of the sport. And when the sport's most visible player doesn't make the most visible team, it turns into a national conversation. Whether that conversation is about philosophy or favoritism depends on your angle. But either way, it's loud. And it's not going away. Now, to be fair, this isn't the end of the road. Clark is early in her career. She'll get more chances. The Olympics aren't the only international stage. But this missed opportunity is significant. because it's rare to see a player arrive with this much momentum and be sidelined so swiftly. And it reveals something deeper about the state of women's basketball, how much it's changing, and how much resistance there still is to that change. What's happening right now is a clash between old and new. The old model says build slow, defend hard, stay in control. The new model says play fast, stretch the floor, embrace chaos. Team USA, for now, is sticking with the old model, and that's their choice. It might work. It's worked before. But if it doesn't, if that control slips, if the team stalls, if they lose by 5 points because they couldn't score in crunch time, every highlight reel of Caitlin Clark will come back like a warning they didn't listen to, and it'll be deserved. Because it's one thing to build a system. It's another to ignore the players who force you to rethink it. Caitlin Clark may not fit the blueprint, but that doesn't mean she doesn't belong. It just means the blueprint might be outdated. Because let's be honest, the shockwaves from Caitlin Clark's exclusion haven't faded. In fact, they're getting louder. Every WNBA game she plays in, every clip that goes viral, every buzzer beater, no-look pass, or logo 3, all adds fuel to the fire. How could this player not be on the Team USA roster? And it's not just fans asking that question. It's commentators, analysts, former players. People who know the game are openly wondering if this decision was short-sighted, overly conservative, or just plain stubborn. What's making this sting even more? Clark isn't struggling. She's excelling. She didn't just show up in the WNBA. She made an impact. She's a floor general, a scoring threat, and an energy shift the moment she touches the ball. The transition from college to the pros? Seamless. The pace, the physicality? She's adjusted. And yet, somehow, the narrative remains. She's not ready. Not ready or not wanted in a system that refuses to bend. That's the quiet part that's getting louder. Because when a player of Clark's caliber is passed over, not for lack of skill, but for lack of system alignment, it starts to look like the system is more interested in preserving itself than evolving. And that's a problem. Not just for Clark, but for women's basketball as a whole. Because this league, this sport, is changing. It's faster. It's more dynamic. It's finally drawing the attention it deserves. And Caitlin Clark is at the center of that momentum. Her style of play doesn't just fit into this new era. It's helping define it. She's not just putting up numbers. She's shifting the conversation. She's drawing new fans, converting skeptics, and making people care. Which is why this snub feels bigger than a basketball decision. It feels like a resistance to progress, a refusal to adapt, a missed opportunity to say, we see what's happening in the game, and we're not afraid to evolve with it. But instead, USA basketball chose comfort over creativity, familiarity over flair, and there's a cost to that. Because while the defensive strategy might hold up in some games, what happens when the offense stalls? What happens in a tight semifinal where no one's hitting shots and the opposition is forcing turnovers? What happens when you need someone who thrives in chaos, who can rise above the system and just score? Clark has that gear, that instinct, that edge, and Team USA won't have access to it. The risk is real, and so is the backlash. Not just because fans are upset, but because the message it sends is so rigid. Fit the system or stay home. Doesn't matter what you bring to the table. If it's not on the menu, it's not being served. But basketball doesn't always go according to the menu. Games aren't scripted. Sometimes what you need isn't in the playbook. It's in the moment. And Clark lives in those moments. She creates them. She dominates them. Which makes it even harder to justify leaving her behind. Even from a strategic standpoint, her exclusion feels questionable. Because if Coach Lawson's philosophy is about controlling the tempo, managing possessions, and limiting mistakes, why not have a wild card in your back pocket? Why not carry someone who can break open a game when nothing else is working? Why bet everything on one style of play? Especially when that style has limits. Because history has shown us, international teams are evolving too. France, Spain, Australia, they're not sitting back. They're building more versatile, athletic, and offensively capable rosters than ever before. The gap is shrinking. The game is global. And while defense will always be crucial, there's no longer room to assume that Team USA can win on structure alone. So when you take a player like Clark and decide she's not right for the system, you better be very sure that your system doesn't break. Because if it does, if that plan fails on the international stage, there will be no shortage of people ready to say what everyone's already thinking. Caitlin Clark should have been there. This isn't about entitlement. It's about evolution. And the refusal to embrace it doesn't just hold back one player. It holds back the future of the sport. The game is changing, and the people making decisions need to catch up. Clark represents more than stats. She represents a new kind of player, one that doesn't ask for permission, one that demands the spotlight, and earns it every time she steps on the court, and one that, whether she's on a roster or not, is going to be at the center of the conversation. Every missed opportunity Team USA has in this tournament, it'll come back to this decision. Every possession that stalls, every moment where they need a spark, every close call, because this isn't a footnote. It's a headline, and until the strategy matches the talent available, it's going to keep repeating. So now the question flips. If not now, when? When will USA basketball recognize that the future of the game isn't just something to be managed, it's something to be embraced? That players like Caitlin Clark aren't disruptors, they're leaders. That a system too rigid to include the best talent isn't a strong system, it's a fragile one. Let us know how you feel. Was this a missed opportunity? Did Team USA play it too safe? Or is this the right move for a system that prioritizes structure over star power? Drop your take in the comments. Like the video if you believe the game is changing. Share it with someone who knows Clark deserved a shot. And hit subscribe, because when the games begin and the pressure's on, the absence of Caitlin Clark might just become the story that overshadows everything else.